Hi, my name's Monique Rhodes. Do you know what I've learned after working with thousands of people either transitioning into retirement or once they're in retirement? The ones who struggle the most aren't the ones who didn't save enough money. They're the ones who didn't prepare for everything else. You see, most retirement planning focuses on the numbers. Do you have enough? How long will it last? What about the inflation? And yeah, that stuff matters. But it's not what keeps my clients up at night 6 months after they retire. What keeps them up is the loss of identity, the loneliness, the feeling that they've worked their whole lives for this moment of freedom, and now that they've got it, they don't know what to do with it. So in this video, I'm going to share 5 things I wish every person knew before they retired. Not the financial stuff, you can get that anywhere. I'm talking about the real, messy human side of retirement that nobody prepares you for. The stuff that actually determines whether you'll be happy or whether you'll spend years trying to figure out what went wrong. And I want you to know that the 5th one is one that might be a little bit surprising for you. And look, if you're watching this and wondering whether you're actually ready to retire or you're in retirement and you're feeling like you're just not where you want to be, I've put together a retirement roadmap quiz. It's completely free. It takes just a couple of minutes. You get a personalized PDF and a bonus video as well, and it'll help you figure out where you actually stand on the things that matter. The link is in the description below. Right, let's get into it. Thing number 1, you've got to have something to retire to, not just something to retire from. So this is the big one. This is the one that catches almost everyone off guard. I had this client, let's call him David. He'd spent 25 years as a senior manager at a manufacturing company. He had long hours, he had high stress, he had constant pressure. And David came to me 6 months before his retirement date. His portfolio was sorted, his pension was in order, all the financial boxes were ticked. And I asked him, "So David, what are you going to do when you retire?" He said, "I'm going to do nothing." And he had this huge smile on his face. He told me he was done. He said, no more early mornings, no more stress, no more difficult conversations with underperforming staff. He told me he was going to sleep in, play some golf, and finally relax. Fast forward to 6 months later, and he rang me in a state. "I don't know what's wrong with me." That's what he said to me. He said that he thought he'd be happy. He told me he thought retirement would be amazing, but he says that he's actually waking up every day and he feels empty. This is what I see all the time. People spend decades dreaming about retirement as the finish line. They think that freedom is just the absence of work. So they hit the brakes hard. They do a full stop, and suddenly they're at home with nothing but time on their hands. And for the first few weeks, maybe months, it feels brilliant. There's no alarm clock, there's no commutes, there's no deadlines. It's paradise. But then reality sets in, because here's what most people don't realize. Work gives you so much more than just money. It gives you structure. It gives you purpose. It gives you identity. So when someone asks, "What do?" you've got an answer. When you wake up, you know why you're getting out of bed. You've got places to be. You've got people depending on you. You've got problems to solve. And when you strip all that away overnight, you're not liberated. You're just untethered. And that's genuinely dangerous for your mental health. Now, contrast David's approach with another client of mine. Her name's Margaret. She was a head teacher and she retired at 62. But 18 months before her retirement date, she came to me and we started planning together. No vague plans like, "I'll spend more time with the grandkids," but concrete plans. And she volunteered one afternoon a week at a literacy charity. We got her to join a local walking group. She started taking piano lessons. That was something she'd always wanted to do, but she'd never had time for. And she also set up a little educational consulting business. Nothing major, but just helping schools with their Ofsted preparations a couple of days a month. So when we got Margaret to retirement, it wasn't a cliff edge. It was a gentle slope. She went from 5 days a week to 2 days a week to eventually just the things she'd already started. So she had something to retire to. 2 years on, Margaret's thriving. Well, David, we did some work and we eventually figured it out, but it took him the best part of 3 years and a fair bit of struggle to get there. So here's what I tell all my clients. You need to start planning what you're retiring to at least a year before you finish work. And I don't mean vague ideas. I mean you have to be able to answer these questions. What time will you get up? What will you do on a Tuesday morning? Who will you see regularly? What will give you a sense of purpose? What will make you feel like you matter? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Society doesn't really value retired people the way it values workers. That's not fair, but it's real. So you need to find ways to value yourself. Maybe that's through volunteering. Maybe it's starting just a small little offshoot business. Maybe it's becoming really serious about a hobby. Maybe it's caring for your grandchildren. I don't know what it is for you, but you need to know before you retire. One client of mine, we call it together a mini retirement. So that transition period where you're not fully working, but you're not fully retired either. So you're testing things out. You're seeing what fits. You're building that structure of your new life while you've still got one foot in your old life. And if you're thinking, I don't know what that looks like for me yet, it's exactly why I created the Retirement Roadmap quiz. It'll help you start thinking about these questions properly before you make the leap. And the link is in the description. All right, thing number 2. It's okay to work in retirement. In fact, you might need to, right? This one trips people up because it sounds contradictory, all right? I get people saying to me all the time, if you're working, you're not retired. And I get it. If you've spent 40 years grinding away at a job you hate, the idea of voluntarily doing any work after you retire sounds insane. But here's the thing that people miss. There's a massive difference between having to work and choosing to work. One is prison, the other is freedom. So I had this client, John. He was adamant he'd never work another day after he retired. He was a finance director. He had this really high pressure job and he was constantly putting out fires. But when he retired at 58, he was done, finished, never again. And for the first year, he was fine. He traveled a bit, he did up the house, he spent time with his grandkids, but by year 2, something was off and he couldn't quite put his finger on it. But he felt dull, like his brain was getting foggy. He'd forget words, he'd lose track of conversations, and he started worrying about dementia. And I asked him, when was the last time you really had to think hard about something, like solve a complex problem? And he looked at me blankly and he said, I'm retired. I'm not supposed to have things hard to think about. But here's the reality. Your brain needs stimulation, proper stimulation. You can do crossword puzzles and Sudoku all day long, but here's something about real work. Solving actual problems, creating value, interacting with people who need your expertise, that keeps your mind sharp in a way that hobbies just don't. And the research backs this up, by the way. So studies show that people who continue some form of work in retirement, whether that's paid or unpaid, they have better cognitive function and lower rates of dementia than those who completely stop. So eventually John started doing a little bit of consultancy work, not full-time, but just 1 or 2 days a week, and he was helping small businesses sort out their finances. And within months, he was sharper, he was more engaged, the brain fog lifted. So here's the key though. Work wasn't the main event anymore. That's what makes it different. When you're working for a living, work is the center of your universe and everything else orbits around it. Your social life happens around work. Your holidays are squeezed between work commitments. Even your identity is wrapped up in your job. But when you're retired and you choose to work a bit, the relationship flips. Work becomes a side hustle. Life is the main event. So you take months off when you feel like it. You say no to projects that didn't interest you. You work because it's adding something to your life, not because you'll be homeless without it. And here's another thing I tell my clients. You shouldn't have to do what you've always done. In fact, you probably shouldn't. So I worked with a woman. She'd been a solicitor for 35 years. She was high-powered. She was in commercial law. She was really successful. And when she retired, she took a part-time job in a local garden centre. Minimum wage, no stress, just helping people choose plants and talking about gardening. And I've got to tell you, she loves every minute of it. You know, she said to me that for 35 years she'd had to be the smartest person in the room. She had to have all the answers. She had to win arguments. And now she just helps people grow tomatoes, and it's brilliant. So another client of mine, she was a former teacher. She had 30 years of experience. She now drives for a local charity that takes elderly people to medical appointments. 2 days a week. She gets to chat with people. She gets to help them out. There's no pressure whatsoever. And she says this is the most rewarding work she's ever done. So the point is this. Retirement is about never working again. It's about having the freedom to choose. Work if you want to. Don't work if you want to. But don't feel like you've failed at retirement if you find yourself wanting to do something purposeful. Some of my clients work because they need the mental stimulation. Some of them work because they want the social connection. We'll get into that in a minute. And some of them work because they like having a little bit of extra money to play with. And some work because they genuinely enjoy what they do and they'd be bored without it. So all of those are perfectly valid reasons. The only wrong reason is I have to because I'll starve otherwise. If that's your situation, you're not really retired. You're just working fewer hours. But if you're choosing to work, even if it's just a few hours a week, that's not failure. That's you designing the retirement life you actually want, not the one you think you're supposed to have. And if you're uncertain about how work might fit into your retirement plans, or whether you even need to think about this, take the Retirement Roadmap quiz. It's in the description, and it'll help you think through whether staying mentally active through some form of work might be right for you. Okay, thing number 3. Your work colleagues will drift away, and that is going to hurt. This one catches people completely off guard, and it's one of the most painful parts of retirement that nobody warns you about. So I had this client, Sarah. She'd worked in the same company for 28 years, and she had what she thought were close friends there. People she'd been through everything with: office politics, restructures, celebrations, crises. She went to their kids' wedding. They came to hers. Real relationships, or so she thought. And when she retired, she made a real effort to stay in touch. She'd organise lunches, she'd send emails, she'd suggest meeting up. And for the first few months, people came, but there was something different. The conversation didn't flow the way it used to. They'd talk about people that Sarah didn't know anymore, projects she wasn't involved in, office gossip that meant nothing to her. And 6 months in, she stopped getting replies to her emails. And when she did manage to arrange lunch, people would cancel. "Oh, I'm so sorry, something's come up at work." And she got hold of me and we spoke, and she was in tears. And she told me that she thought that these people were her friends. And she said, "I feel like I've been dumped." Here's the hard truth. I had to tell her, work colleagues are not your friends. Not usually, not really. And I know that sounds brutal, but please stay with me. They're not your friends in the way that real friends are friends. They're friendly. You might genuinely like them. You might care about them. But most of the friendships at work are based on proximity and shared work context. You're close because you're in the same place. You're dealing with the same problems. You're speaking the same language. Take that away, that shared context, and there's often not much left to sustain the relationship. So think about it. When you're at work together, you don't have to try. You see each other every day. You've got built-in topics of conversation. The effort that's required to maintain the relationship is minimal because you're thrown together by circumstance. But once you leave, maintaining that relationship requires deliberate effort from both sides. And the person who's still working, they've got a whole new set of priorities. They might have a new boss to impress. They might have new colleagues to bond with. They might have new office politics to navigate. They're looking forward, and you're now part of their past. It's not personal. It's not because they don't like you. It's just life. But here's where it gets really difficult for many people, especially men. Work colleagues are their primary, sometimes their only social group. So they didn't develop friendships outside of work because they didn't have time. Their social lives were essentially work events, the Christmas party, Friday drinks, team away days. So when work ends and those relationships naturally fade, they're left with a massive hole in their life. And that isolation, it's dangerous. It's really dangerous. You know, loneliness in retirement is linked to higher rates of depression, cognitive decline, and even earlier mortality. This isn't just about feeling a bit sad. This is a genuine health risk. So I worked with a guy, Robert. He'd been a successful lawyer. And when he retired, he realized that aside from his wife, he didn't have a single real friend. Every social interaction he'd had for the past 30 years had been work-related. And now suddenly, he had nobody to call, nowhere to go, nothing to do. And he described it as feeling invisible. He told me that he walks down the street and he realizes that nobody knows who he is anymore. Nobody needs him. He feels like he doesn't matter. Now that's heartbreaking, and it's far more common than you'd think. But the good news is that once you recognize this is going to happen, you can do something about it. Which brings me to thing number 4. Thing number 4, you've got to be proactive about making new friends. So if you sit at home waiting for the phone to ring, I can absolutely guarantee you one thing: it won't ring. So this is probably the hardest thing about retirement, especially if you're an introvert. Making new friends as an adult is hard. Making new friends as a retired adult, when you no longer have the natural social structure of work, that's even harder. But it has to be done, because the alternative, isolation and loneliness, will genuinely kill you. So how do you do it? Well, here's what I tell my clients, and here's what consistently works. First, you need to do a proper deep dive into who you actually are. Not who you were at work, not who people expected you to be, but who you actually are now, at this stage of your life. What do you genuinely enjoy? Not what sounds impressive, not what you think you should enjoy, what actually lights you up. So one of my clients, Michael, he'd been an accountant for 40 years. He's analytical, detail-oriented, and he's a bit of an introvert. And when he retired, everyone told him he should join the golf club. That's what retired men do, he was told. But he hated golf. He hated it. And he spent 6 months forcing himself to play because he thought that's what he was supposed to do in retirement. He made no friends, he didn't have any fun, and he felt miserable. And then one day, completely by accident, he ended up at a local history society meeting. Someone had left a leaflet in the library, and he thought, why not? Turns out, he loved it. He loved the research. He loved learning about the local area. He loved the fact that it was structured and intellectual rather than sporty and social. And within a year, he'd made 3 really good friends, people he he actually had things in common with. The lesson: don't do what you think retired people are supposed to do. Do what you actually enjoy. So for introverts, I always recommend structured activities rather than purely social ones. Book clubs, investment groups, local history societies, art classes. Things where you're focused on an activity or a topic, not just on making conversation. Because friendship develops naturally around shared interests. And for extroverts, it's different. They often do better with more active social groups. So sports clubs, walking groups, volunteering with lots of team interaction. They need that energy from being around people. One of my extroverted clients joined a local cycling club, and now he's out every weekend with 15 other people cycling 40 to 50 miles, stopping for coffee and lunch. He's just said it's really fun. He has heaps of laughs, and he's made some of his best friends through that group. I have another client, a woman who was in marketing. She started volunteering at a local food bank. She's there 2 days a week, and she's working alongside other volunteers, and she's helping people in her community. Now, the friendships that developed are real ones. They're based on shared values. They're based on spending time together, doing something meaningful. But here's the key thing. You have to be consistent. You can't try something once, feel uncomfortable because you're the new person, and give up. It takes time. So when you walk into that first meeting or class or group session, you're going to feel awkward. You're going to feel like you don't belong. Everyone else will seem to know each other. They might even have inside jokes you don't understand. You'll feel like the outsider. That is normal. Push through it. By the third or fourth session, you'll stop being the new person. People will start recognizing you. You'll start having short conversations. Someone will mention something you know about. You'll make a comment maybe that gets a laugh. By the 10th session, you'll be part of the group. Doesn't mean you'll necessarily be best friends with everyone, but you'll belong. And from there, deeper friendships can develop. But you have to show up consistently, even when it feels uncomfortable. Now, the other thing I tell clients, be open to friendships with people who aren't like you. Different ages, different backgrounds, different politics even. When you're working, you tend to socialize with people who are professionally similar to you. Same industry, same level, similar incomes. But in retirement, that doesn't matter anymore. You know, some of my clients have made wonderful friendships with people 20 years or younger or 20 years older. Different life experiences, different perspectives, but shared interests that bring them together. So don't limit yourself by thinking, I can only be friends with people who are exactly like me. That's a recipe for a very small, very limited social circle. Now, volunteering is another brilliant way to make friends while you're doing something purposeful, because you're working towards something together which bonds people. You're helping others, which feels good, and you'll naturally spend time with people who care about similar things to you. I've seen clients make incredible friendships through volunteering, and it's a double benefit because you're addressing the purpose problem from thing number 1 and the friendship problem from thing number 4 at the same time. But whatever you do, don't do nothing. Don't sit at home thinking that friendship will somehow find you. It won't. You have to go out and create it. So if you're watching this and thinking, not even sure where to start, don't forget the Retirement Roadmap quiz will help you think through what kind of social activities might suit your personality and interests. The link's in the description. All right, finally, thing number 5. You need to shift your mindset from saving to spending. All right? This is going to surprise you because it goes against everything you've been told about retirement. Most people think that retirement is about conserving your money, being careful, making it last. And there's some truth to that. But here's what I've observed working with thousands of retired people. The ones who are happiest aren't the ones who saved every penny. They're the ones who spent their money on experiences and enjoying their life while they still could. Of this couple that I work with, Linda and Tom, they retired with a decent pot of money. Not millions and millions, but enough. And they were terrified of spending it, terrified of running out, so they lived like paupers. They didn't go on holidays, they didn't eat out, they didn't do anything that cost money. And I did everything to try and encourage them to live. Tom died at 68. He had a heart attack. It was totally sudden. And Linda was left with all of this money and all of these regrets. One of the things she said to me was, we never went to Italy. He'd always wanted to see Rome. We had the money, we just never did it. And that broke my heart, because that's the point of all this saving. What are you doing if you don't actually enjoy it? And here's what I've learned. Spending patterns change dramatically over the course of retirement. Most people spend the most in the first decade of retirement, roughly from 60 to 70. That's when you've got the health, the energy, and the desire to do things. You want to travel? Do it in your 60s. You want to buy the nice car or the boat or whatever? Do it in your 60s. Want to take the grandkids to Disneyland? Do it in your 60s. But by your 70s, you probably won't want to anymore. Not because you can't afford it, but because you won't have the energy or the desire. I've got clients in their late 70s and 80s who tell me the same thing. I don't really want anything anymore. I'm happy with simple pleasures. A nice meal at home, working in the garden, time with my family. So their spending has dropped dramatically, not because they're being careful, but because they genuinely don't need or want as much. One of my clients is in his 80s and he said to me, I spent my 60s worrying about running out of money. Now I'm in my 80s and I've got more than I started with. I wish I'd spent more when I could have enjoyed it. So my advice is this: front load your spending. Spend on experiences in those early years of retirement when you can actually enjoy them. Take the trips, buy the things you've always wanted. Do the stuff that requires good health and energy. And if you're worried about running out of money, well, first of all, you probably won't, because most people underestimate how much their spending will naturally decrease as they age. But second, remember thing number 2. You can always go back to work part-time if you need to. You've got options. So the biggest financial mistake that I see in retirement isn't overspending, it's underspending. It's people sitting on piles of money they're too afraid to use and either dying with it all unspent or reaching an age where they physically can't enjoy it anymore. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you to be reckless. I'm not saying blow your entire pot on a yacht, but I am saying shift your mindset from accumulation to enjoyment. You've spent 40 years saving. Now it's time to actually use some of that money to live the life you saved for. Because here's the thing nobody tells you: you can't take it with you. And the richest person in the graveyard, they're just dead. So there you have it. 5 things I wish everyone knew before they retired. 1, have something to retire to, not just from. 2, it's okay to work in retirement. You might even need to. 3, your work colleagues will drift away. 4, you've got to be proactive about making new friends. And 5, shift from saving to spending. Now, these aren't the sexy answers about compound interest and tax wrappers, but these are the things that will actually determine whether you're happy in retirement or whether you struggle to figure it out. And if you're watching this and thinking, I need to properly assess where I stand on this, go and do the retirement roadmap quiz. It's totally free. It'll give you some insight and a personalized PDF so you can look at where you're at. Thanks for watching. I would genuinely love to know what you think about these. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's been your experience? Leave a comment below. I read every comment. And if this resonated with you, you might want to check out some of my other videos. All right, take care. See you in the next video.